Every day, people lie more often than we realize. In fact, researchers suggest that the average person is exposed to dozens, sometimes even hundreds, of small lies in a single day. These lies don't always come from strangers or obvious bad actors. Sometimes they come from people close to us, friends, co-workers, even family members. Someone might lie about where they were, what they did, or why something happened. Most of the time, we never question it, because the lies are subtle and easy to miss. The real danger is that when we cannot recognize deception, we become easy to manipulate. We start believing stories that are not true and making decisions based on false information. But the good news is that lying often leaves clues. In this video, you will discover several powerful psychological techniques that can help you spot a liar before they even finish their sentence. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to detect a lie is asking questions that are too simple. Questions like, "Did you go out last night?" are incredibly easy to answer with a quick yes or no. A liar can respond instantly without feeling much pressure. But skilled investigators use a different strategy known as the magic question trick. Instead of asking whether something happened, they ask questions that assume the event already took place. For example, instead of asking, "Did you go out last night?" you might ask, "What made you stay out so late last night?" This type of question forces the person to react immediately. If they are telling the truth, they can easily explain what happened. But if they are lying, they suddenly have to invent a detailed story on the spot. Creating believable details under pressure is difficult, and that is where many liars make mistakes. They hesitate, contradict themselves, or give vague explanations. By changing the way you ask questions, you make deception much harder to maintain. Another powerful technique for spotting deception is the 5-second rule. The first 5 seconds after you ask a question are often the most revealing moment in a conversation. During this short window, the brain has not yet had enough time to carefully construct a convincing lie. A truthful person usually responds naturally because they are recalling a real memory. But a liar must quickly invent details while also trying to appear calm. This mental pressure often leaks through small behavioral signals. Watch closely for things like sudden pauses, looking away, touching the face, fidgeting, or a noticeable change in voice tone. These reactions can appear almost instantly before the person fully controls their response. However, it is important not to rely on just one sign. Anyone can look away or hesitate for innocent reasons. The key is to notice patterns. When 2 or more unusual behaviors appear within those first few seconds, it may indicate that the person is struggling to hide something. Another effective strategy used by investigators is called the baseline trick. Before trying to detect a lie, you first need to understand how a person behaves when they are relaxed and telling the truth. This normal pattern of behavior is known as their baseline. Pay attention to simple things such as how they speak, how fast they talk, where they usually look during conversation, and how they move their hands or body. Everyone has a natural communication style. Some people speak quickly and make strong eye contact, while others may talk slowly or look away often. Once you understand this normal pattern, it becomes much easier to notice when something changes. If someone who normally maintains eye contact suddenly starts staring at the floor, or if a fast speaker suddenly begins pausing and choosing words carefully, it may signal discomfort. For example, imagine a coworker who normally talks confidently and openly, but when you ask about a missing report, their voice becomes slower and they avoid eye contact. That sudden shift from their baseline behavior can be an important clue that something is not quite right. Another clever method for detecting deception is the double check trap. This technique involves asking about the same situation more than once, but in slightly different ways. People who are telling the truth usually answer consistently because they are recalling a real memory. Real experiences are stored naturally in the brain, so it is easy for them to repeat the same information later. Liars, however, are not remembering events, they are remembering the story they invented. And fake stories are much harder to keep perfectly consistent. For example, you might first ask someone, "You went to the movies yesterday, right?" They may confidently answer yes. Later in the conversation, you casually ask, "What movie did you watch yesterday?" A truthful person will quickly give the same details again. But a liar may hesitate, change parts of the story, or suddenly struggle to remember. Because they are juggling made-up details, even small follow-up questions can expose contradictions. Over time, these small inconsistencies reveal that something about the story does not add up. Another subtle signal of deception appears in the language people choose. When someone is not fully confident in what they are saying, they often use weak or uncertain words. Instead of speaking clearly and directly, they soften their statements with phrases like maybe, I think, probably, or I guess. These words create distance between the speaker and the claim they are making. For example, a confident statement would sound like, I was at home last night. But a weaker version might be, I think I was probably at home last night. Notice how uncertain the second sentence feels. This type of language gives the speaker a psychological escape route. If the statement turns out to be wrong or questioned later, they can easily retreat by saying they were not completely sure. Truthful people usually speak more directly because they are describing real events. Liars, on the other hand, often hide behind vague language to reduce the risk of being caught. Another common behavior of someone who is lying is the sudden change of topic. When a person feels that the conversation is getting too close to the truth, their brain may try to escape the pressure by quickly shifting the discussion to something else. For example, if you ask where they were last night and they sense your suspicion, they might suddenly say something like, "Oh, by the way, did you see that funny video everyone is talking about?" This unexpected shift is often a psychological defense mechanism. They hope that by introducing a new subject, your attention will move away from the uncomfortable question. When this happens, the best response is to calmly guide the conversation back to the original topic. You might say, "We can talk about that in a moment, but first tell me more about where you went last night." Liars often become noticeably uncomfortable when they are not allowed to escape the question. The interrupt trick is another powerful way to reveal a lie. When someone is telling a fabricated story, their brain is working much harder than someone who is simply recalling the truth. A liar has to remember the details they already invented, while also thinking about what to say next. If you interrupt them in the middle of their story with an unexpected question, it suddenly increases the mental pressure. For example, if someone says, "I went to the store and bought some milk," you might interrupt and ask, "Wait, what were you doing right before you decided to go to the store?" A truthful person can usually answer easily, because they are remembering real events. But a liar often becomes confused, pauses too long, or changes parts of the story. The interruption disrupts their prepared narrative, making it much harder to keep the lie consistent. The fake detail trap is a surprisingly effective technique for exposing deception. The idea is simple. During a conversation, you intentionally introduce a small detail that is incorrect and observe how the other person reacts. Someone who is telling the truth usually notices the mistake immediately because they remember the real event clearly. They will often correct you without hesitation. For example, you might say, "You mentioned it was raining that day when you went to the store." If the person is being honest, they will likely respond quickly with something like, "No, it wasn't raining that day." Their reaction is natural because they are recalling a real memory. A liar, however, often behaves differently. Since their story is already fabricated, they may not want to challenge the new detail because they fear creating contradictions in their own narrative. As a result, they might simply agree with the false detail and continue the story. This willingness to accept incorrect information can be a strong sign that the person is trying to maintain a lie rather than describe what truly happened. Learning to spot a lie is not about accusing people, but about understanding human behavior more clearly. In this video, we explored several powerful techniques: asking smarter assumption-based questions, observing the first 5 seconds of reactions, establishing a behavioral baseline, double-checking stories, noticing weak language, watching for sudden topic changes, interrupting fabricated stories, and using the fake detail trap. None of these methods works perfectly on its own, but when you combine them with careful observation and your own intuition, they become extremely powerful. If something feels off, there is often a reason. Try using these techniques in everyday conversations and see what you notice. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more psychology insights.